Well, earlier today I was a little bothered by the half schedule of mine. So, to give you a context of what this stream is going to be about, I had a um, person I was discussing political issues with. Say hello to Amino. And we're kind of just dabbling here, watching the movie together. But they mentioned, oh, Kennedy was this great man. And I said, well, he was all right. And he goes, what do you mean? All the civil rights stuff. Blah, blah, blah. And so I point out the fact that most major laws that people associate with the 60s, not even just with civil rights, but with food stamps, the Environmental Protection Agency, um, you had, or rather, excuse me, Environmental Protection Agency is Nixon, but the idea is that most of these laws were passed under LBJ, let me say Lord Envoy. And this person's argument was that because JFK was the architect of these different pieces of legislation that became the Great Society, he's the one who should deserve all the credit or the praise or whatever. And I thought to myself, let me say hello to Saberwolf. To give you an idea of why I think that's ridiculous, the first is just put yourself in that position. Let's say that I write out a blueprint for a house, and any of the three of you that are currently in the stream decide to get the bricks and completely construct that home alone. Now, after you construct this home alone, you start seeing newspaper articles talking about Justin was the architect of the project and he did such a great job with conceptualizing this. And it completely omits the fact that you're the one who built it. Would you or would you not feel as if praise was being given to the wrong person? That it takes more than just having idea, because really, if an idea is not implemented, it was just an idea. It's just a thought. So I argued to him, while Kennedy may have had the thought, which I can't even prove that's true, um, you had Johnson who was able to implement, make it a reality, and and this kind of goes back to what I hate about a lot of these modern. Well, I don't hate, but one of the things that kind of my pet peeve is with a lot of these historians of the present era. I feel like a lot of them don't try to look at any of these presidents or heads of states' lives outside of when they were in office as president. If you actually go and look at JFK and LBJ's careers as senators, there is a stark contrast. LBJ was one of the best senators in terms of getting things passed we've ever seen as Senate Majority Leader. JFK was effectively the water boy of the Democrats for 8 years before he decided to run for president with all of the right chips at his disposal. This is the same thing with Obama. Um, After he was elected in 2004, he sat on his Senate seat and kind of remained, didn't really do anything that was that big of a deal for 2 years, and had a kind of a squeaky clean record because he didn't speak out or, actually come out in favor of something, and was able to run later on with the right chips at his disposal and win that next election. So what I'm trying to convey here is that I can guarantee you, because he was making the claim that, we will never know how JFK would have passed or have if he had been able to pass these laws. So yeah, that's true. That's why it's a it's potential. It's something that we will never know what would have happened. But with Johnson, we know not only what happened while he was in office as president, but while he was senator. And during both of those times, he was able to pass legislation, even in just being the majority leader in the Senate, and at one point the minority leader. But the idea here is that I don't like the idea, or rather the thought, that if someone composes something and another person actually makes it happen, the person who composed it is now the only individual, or the individual gets the bulk of credit. I think that's ridiculous. And really, his thing kind of irritated me slightly more because when I talk about various political things, for example, I try to make it to where I don't say something unless I'm fully convinced. Even if it's an opinion, I try to give it the mentality of, oh, let me think of this or put this together. I believe the credit should be 50-50. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that, Saber. At least with the JFK and LBJ example, and that's only because we don't while we don't know if Kennedy might have been able to pass those We saw from his Senate career that he was again just a run of the mill Democrat at that point. So and whereas Johnson wasn't. So I'm giving you my explanation of why I think even like you should give more credit for the fact that not only did that person get it passed, but the other person, had they lived, probably wouldn't have either, or have been able have been successful. And also, they act like he wasn't in office for 2 years, where nothing of any substantive nature that people can say, oh yeah, I remember JFK signed that, managed to come about. So that should be telling of I mean, even if you don't like Obama, which I'm not his fan at all, Obamacare still came out during his first 2 years. Trump still signed the tax cuts during his first 2 years. Just it's not hard to get things passed, that matter. People have things that they can. All I'm saying is you get the idea that if you can't get something passed halfway through your term, which is he was more than through at the time of his unfortunate murder, that's a problem, and that's a telling sign of what your talents are. But I don't want to turn this into the Kennedy critique boat, because we could go on that for a whole day or two. Um, Really, I just wanted to kind of touch on the idea that in many of the occasions where I've spoken with people about who deserves credit for different things, we have this tendency to kind of push all of our efforts on one person. You look at Martin Luther King Day, for example, and you would start to think that if we're playing revisionist history, that people like Ralph Abernathy, um, didn't exist. That these individuals who played a big role in that part of American history don't get lauded for seemingly anything at all. They might show up in a cameo in a movie, but as far as, oh, let's go write 3 books about that person, they won't bother with it. And that it's kind of disturbing to me that when you have large groups involved with things, and then one person becomes seemingly the obsessive focus of all of the you know memorials and tributes afterward, the rest tend to get lost in the wayside. I mean, imagine if, and I said to myself, I make a video where I go, well, this is my last day on YouTube, and it starts with me saying, I appreciate the people I've subscribed, and I go, oh yeah, but especially Saberwolf. How is Envoy going to feel when he knows that he was just as frequent a user as Saberwolf was, for example? He's gonna say to himself, "Man, I was sitting in this guy's streams and actively contributing, and this is how I get treated. I get sidelined because one person supposedly grabbed his attention more. That's the role I'm destined to play." It kind of comes down to popularity. Oh yeah, well I think, when I did the JFK is the most overrated president of all time, I think that goes in line with your statement there. That idea of, well, this person ended up having this bad thing happen to them, so now they're this legend, and how dare you criticize them, and they're the last of their kind, even though if you look at what they did in office, it's again run of the mill. But I can completely see that perspective. So I'm in line with that view, that school of thought. But yeah, for tomorrow, I'm planning on doing a stream about the 70 stab wounds that young girl had by her mother, and probably responding to that CIA confirmation. It's sad though, but history has always been like that. I guess the victors get to tell the tale. Uh, yeah, I mean, I get so infuriated when I see people who will like pick a president that served in the last 50 or 60 years and say this was the best one. It's not that it's just their favorite, because I can completely attest to that, but when there's a certain level of objectivity that we have to have. I think when it comes to making bold claims about leaders of the free world, for example, I told you guys about the one person that wrote on her page that JFK was the best president ever, and then somebody else wrote that Reagan was the best, and I was just sitting here, kind of shaking my head, thinking to myself, you have uh, those ranking systems with those historians, and they range between having different ideologies, and oftentimes what you'll start to see is the same three of Washington, Lincoln, and FDR just stay up there. No matter who you ask, whether they're conservative or liberal, they always put those three at the top. I think that's objectivity. You have to be able to look beyond your personal preference and just recognize something for what it is. I think a lot of people don't want to do that. That's why we have as many of the issues that we have now, where I talk about, for example, all these homicides of of members of groups by members of their group, and then people get upset and want to leave these nasty comments that while expressing their hatred at the fact that I mentioned a fact, don't really do anything to solve the problem, and then they charge you with bringing it up, with trying to distract, when all you're saying is, hey, look, here's this other thing that also needs to be mentioned or talked about. But it's just how things are, I guess. All right, so I see that the stream's chat room is effectively deceased. I will have something else up definitely to tomorrow, and we might have one stream or two streams, but we'll definitely have at least one. So thank you for watching, and have a good day.